Stranger Things is one of the most popular shows that Netflix has delivered to date. People are heavily invested in the comings and goings of these young characters, who have aged up quite a bit since they first appeared in Season 1. By the end of Season 3, things may have changed permanently for the upcoming 4th season, which is said to be taking place outside of Hawkins this time based on the teaser trailer. But as our attention turns to that 4th season, we have to wonder what state 11 will be in for that season due to her losing her psychic powers and just how the loss of her powers ties to Hopper. During the events of the 3rd season, things got crazier than usual for the party of Dungeons & Dragons fanatics. The Mind Flayer returned to terrorize the town again and was nastier than ever, possessing people and turning them into goo. All that goo was what created the spider monster abomination, the Mind Flayer's body while on Earth. This creature's sole objective was to eliminate Elle, as she was responsible for sending the Mind Flayer back to the Upside Down in Season 2. However, part of the creature was trapped in Hawkins after the gate was closed. The Russians, the enemy of the West during the Cold War, had opened a secret lab underneath the new shopping mall and reopened the gate, which in turn set these chain of events in motion. By the end of Season 3, Elle was seriously wounded by the spider monster and had to use her powers on herself in order to remove part of the Mind Flayer that had embedded itself into her leg. But once that was all over with, we learned that Elle had somehow lost her powers. Even in the epilogue, which took place 3 months after the incident at the mall and the apparent death of Hopper, revealed that Elle had yet to regain her psychic powers, despite Mike being certain that one day they'll return.
They'll come back. I know they will.
Of course, we fully expect that Elle's powers will return at some point in the 4th season, but the question now, how did they vanish? And how exactly will they return, if at all? Of course, the show never outright tells us why Elle lost her powers, but there are clues and theories out there that can help us figure it out. The most likely reason is, of course, Elle got burned out after using her finite amount of powers. We know that using her powers takes a toll on Elle, as evident by the blood coming out of her nose and her exhaustion after performing a more taxing feat. Now in the show, they've described this as Elle having a rechargeable battery. It's very likely that during her extraction of the Mind Flayer in her leg, as well as reading Billy's mind and locating and fighting the monster multiple times in the season, that Elle emptied her hypothetical bar down to 0, and it's yet to replenish itself due to being so overused. Of course, that's the least interesting reason, and it's far from the only explanation out there. 11 was born with powerful abilities due to her mother's exposure to hallucinogenic material while she was pregnant. She was also an MK Ultra test subject. This caught the attention of Hawkins' lab and was the reason why they abducted Elle, or Jane, as she was known then, shortly after her birth. They conducted a series of experiments on her, resulting in her abilities to manifest themselves fully. With these powers, she was able to directly fight off the forces of the Upside Down, including the Demigorgon and the Mind Flayer. But we have to assume that her powers are somehow linked to the Upside Down. Perhaps the Mind Flayer himself. Perhaps Elle can't have her powers without the Mind Flayer. However, this seemingly contradicts a popular fan theory, which may explain why Elle no longer has access to her powers. The spider monster attacked Elle, and part of the Mind Flayer entered her body. We know that the Mind Flayer can possess people and take over their minds, meaning it's a powerful psychic as well. It's quite possible that Elle's powers are directly or indirectly tied to the Upside Down and the Mind Flayer. It's entirely possible then that the Mind Flayer part that had lodged itself into Elle was acting like a virus of sorts and was attacking her own psychic abilities. When it was forcibly removed by what power Elle had left, the Mind Flayer took her powers with it. That piece of the Mind Flayer then rejoined the spider monster's goopy body, perhaps implying that the monster claimed her powers for himself. When Hopper sacrificed himself and closed the gate, the spider monster freaked out and died moments later. If Elle's powers were inside of the piece of the Mind Flayer that was inside of the monster, it could mean that her powers died without it. If that's true, will Elle be without her powers for the 4th season? Or will the Russians' twisted experiments result in her powers returning? This seems likely, especially if her powers are linked to the Upside Down. But then there's the Hopper angle. Elle's only relationship for most of her life was with Dr. Brenner, the man she referred to as Papa. He saw Elle as more of a science project and would manipulate and prod her in order to get the results that he wanted. Once free in the lab and seeing the outside world, she would eventually make friends with the members of the party and ultimately be adopted, first secretly, then officially, as the daughter of Hopper. Hopper himself has had a troubled time of it after losing his own daughter and his marriage shortly after. For Hopper, adopting Elle was something of a new step in order to be the father he never could, and shelter Elle from the bad men trying to harm her, while also making sure that she was given love and a good upbringing. Hopper may not be perfect, but he does care, even if he doesn't get it right all the time.
Boy.
This positive relationship is the only time Elle has had an adult care for her deeply in her entire life that she can recollect. So this theory, which comes from Redditor House Heisenberg, believes that Elle's sudden loss of her powers is directly tied to Hopper. Interestingly, one of Elle's powers is to locate people remotely, even if they're in the Upside Down, by taking away Elle's powers. We, the audience, don't know for certain the fate of Hopper, who was seemingly gone by the end of the season, save for a quick teaser in the after-credits scene. During that bit, we learned that the Russians currently have an American prisoner on hand.
Не американцы.
Is it Hopper or someone else? We honestly don't know, and neither does Elle, forcing her to rely on her wits as opposed to her powers as she's become increasingly dependent on them. Now, there's the question as to if Hopper is truly alive or not. During the beginning of the third season, we see the Russians testing out their machine to open up the gate to the Upside Down. When it goes haywire, we see that the scientists in the room get turned into nasty goop. However, when Hopper apparently kicks the bucket next to the machine, there is no bloody mess left of him. In fact, there is nobody whatsoever, meaning that Elle knows there may be a chance that Hopper is alive. In that epilogue, the showrunners could have easily teased the return of her powers. Perhaps something would have wobbled that only she would have noticed, and it was left ambiguous, but they didn't. Elle is supposed to go into the next season at a disadvantage, and whatever is coming our way will be that much more threatening because the party can't rely on Elle to use her powers to save them. Also, the showrunners could have given fans a clear yes or no answer when it came to the fate of Hopper. This too was intentionally left in the dark, as we didn't see any physical evidence of his passing. Because of all these unanswered questions, we can assume that in some way, shape, or form, Elle's lack of powers are somehow tied to Hopper and thus, the gate. Only, what if it isn't Hopper? In a move that would likely shatter fan expectations, we have to prepare for the possibility that the American prisoner is Elle's other father, Dr. Brenner. Don't forget that we mentioned Elle never verified his passing, so she does not know if Brenner is alive or not. The Russians having Brenner in their possession also answers how they knew there was a gate in Hawkins. This would mean that Hopper may actually be trapped in the Upside Down. With the Season 4 trailer telling fans that they're not in Hawkins anymore, the party may be exploring the depths of the Upside Down in search of him. While inside the Upside Down, Elle's powers may manifest themselves yet again as she searches for her father. This will set her two father figures against each other likely, and that's on top of the inevitable monster that will terrorize the kids. The final piece of evidence that may suggest Hopper is alive somewhere is the use of the song that played at the end of the third season. Die-hard fans will have recognized Peter Gabriel's cover of Bowie's Heroes, which we last heard in Season 1 when Will Byers' decoy body was discovered. While Mike and his friends mourned Will, he was actually alive in the Upside Down. This could be the show's subtle way of telling us that Hopper is trapped in the Upside Down, likely dragged in before the gate closed. So in short, the Mind Flayer that was lodged in Elle's leg likely sapped her powers from out of her as she attempted to remove it. We know the Mind Flayer has some pretty awesome powers of its own, and that the part of it that was inside Elle returned to the spider monster, which in turn died when Hopper closed the gate. It's quite possible Elle could have had her powers restored before the gate closed, but now it's likely lost to her. That is, until the gate opens yet again, and the crew venture forth into the Upside Down, prompting the return of Elle's powers. The question that now remains is just how will the gate get open this time? Will it be open for nefarious reasons, or is a search and rescue the only justification to tempt fate? We like the idea that the showrunners took away Elle's powers in order to build suspense around Hopper. At this point, the two mysteries have to be linked together, right? Or else, why leave them both so ambiguous? Elle could have easily just checked if Hopper was alive if she had her powers, but without it, she's as lost as we are, and that builds tension. Now we want to watch Season 4 just to get the answers to these questions. We can totally see a quest to the Upside Down unfolding, and even Brenner being the mysterious American prisoner makes more sense than Hopper. All of this sounds way more interesting than Elle simply getting burned out, and it offers a lot more juicy story beats that could be explored rather than Elle simply running out of powers like a battery. But consider this. Perhaps Elle's loss of powers has nothing to do with Russians, the Upside Down, her mother, or even the Mind Flayer. We know that Elle's powers seem to trigger based on her emotions, and the more emotional she is, the more powerful they can react. With everything that was going on and the apparent loss of Hopper, could it be that Elle was simply emotionally drained and that she became a bit numb to what was going on around her, and that's what nulled her powers? While her powers do seem to get stronger with her emotions, we don't think this is the reason why she can no longer use them. But that's just our 2 cents. What about you? Do you think she'll get them back, or have the writers intentionally taken them away forever? Is Elle losing her powers tied directly to Hopper? And is the American prisoner really Brenner? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in our playlist. Thanks for watching.